all-star panel. This is a panel to end all panels, right here at the Reagan Library with the Air Force One in the background. We're all going to hop in it and go back to the East Coast when this segment is over. We welcome back Steve Forbes, Forbes Media Chairman and Editor-in-Chief, Liz Peek, Fox News contributor, and Arkansas Congressman French Hill, who happens to be the chair of the House Financial Services Committee. Welcome to all three of you, very dear friends. Here we are. It's a great scene. French Hill, begin with you. I don't know what to make of this new news. I haven't seen any big reactions in the stock market. No one, it's all very vague. President hadn't even signed off on it yet. What do you think, Scott? What's happening here? How do you read it?
Well, first, Larry, it's good to be with you. Good to be at the Reagan Library. I think President Trump is absolutely right on. Something that we should have done decades ago, work and take kinetic action to demonstrate the power associated with all these negotiations we've done for 3 decades. The negotiations, the sanctions, the economic pressure. It's only the threat that President Trump has led in that I think will bring the Iranians to the table. They cannot survive without being able to sell that oil on the open market. And I think the American Navy and our allied Navy can make sure that the Strait of Hormuz is international waters. So that's why I think you don't see the reaction in the oil markets at $90, and the futures market is demonstrating that the U.S. and our allies can bring Iran to bear and win this debate on no nuclear weapon, no export of terrorism, no export of ballistic missile technology. These are the goals that presidents have had for 4 decades, and it's President Trump who's bringing them to heel to achieve that once and for all.
And Mr. Trump is not moving those red lines. He is not moving them. That's, in some sense, that's the best part of this whole story, it seems to me. They're firing at each other now. The ceasefire is full of holes. I don't know what any of that means. Diplomacy. But you listen to him, and I say this to you as a senior Republican in the House. No nuclear developments of capabilities. The enriched uranium has got to go, and the Strait of Hormuz has got to be reopened. No tolls, no control by Iran, and state-sponsored terrorism's got to stop. I've not heard him waver from any of that once.
This has been stated American policy since the Marine barracks bombing when you worked in the White House.
That's right.
But there's only been one effort. It's a bold effort, but it's the only effort I've ever seen that actually will put teeth to achieving it. We've tried diplomacy. Well, the Democrats charge we should have more diplomacy. We've had 50 years of diplomacy here. We've tried economic sanctions. We've tried intelligence community actions, both to disrupt the nuclear and to disrupt terrorism. And it's this threat and our partners in the region that I think will bring a stability and peace to the Middle East that we've never witnessed in our lifetime.
Steve Forbes, also as an alumni of the Reagan administration, just seemed like only yesterday, for heaven's sakes. But read me.
The way you look, Larry, just yesterday.
It is just yesterday, with the help of some of the best makeup people in the business, Fox hair and makeup. Anyway, in a serious vein, though, I mean, there are many similarities with Reagan and Trump, particularly in the situation they've been in, facing off against Soviet communism and now facing off really Iranian, radical Islam communism is what it is. How do you read this story? Is there going to be additional kinetic, which is a wonderful word we hear, meaning more bombing to bring Iran to its senses? I mean, the Iranians today are saying, the head of the Parliament's National Security Council, they want, this is their demands, okay? They want to be able to enrich uranium. They want to possess enriched uranium, okay? They want to open up they want to control with tolls the Strait of Hormuz, and they want to end all the financial sanctions against them. Now, that's what they said. That was reported in this morning's paper, okay? I think it was the Wall Street Journal, for that matter. Could have been the New York Post. I'm just saying, it just doesn't sound like we've advanced the ball at all.
No, and they live in a very weird, radical world. And what we're going to have, Larry, is the military version of what Ronald Reagan did in Reykjavik when he was negotiating with Gorbachev. At the last minute, they had this great agreement. Gorbachev tried to slip in, as you pointed out, to do away with Star Wars. Reagan walked away. His staff was furious. Everyone was furious, but he did it. President Trump's going to have to do the same thing with Iran. They're going to have to resume hostilities, complete those targets. Only then will these weirdos, terrorist weirdos in Tehran, get the message they're not going to win at the negotiating table, doing all the stalling they've done in the past, tearing up agreements when it doesn't, they don't want to do it. So there have to be one more round before they get the message.
Yeah, I reckon you're right. And Liz, Scott Besson, who will be here tomorrow, I'm going to interview him tomorrow in front of the whole group, but he gave a strong press conference, and he's now increasing the sanctions, taking away all their offshore bank accounts. They're trying to slip through airlines, hotel, all that stuff's now being sanctioned. You know, you're out of anybody that does business with Iran, out of the American system, okay? Out of the SWIFT system, out of the New York Fed wire for transactions, et cetera, et cetera. Now, there's a lot of similarities. Reagan used heavy economic sanctions against the Soviet Union, not just Gorbachev, but before Gorbachev and during Gorbachev. Not enough has been written about that, but it's very similar here too. And I think in policy terms, not necessarily personality, but in policy terms and challenges, they're very similar. I mean, they're bookending whatever, we're going to call it 50 years, whatever we're going to call it. It's a hell of a thing.
I think that's totally right. And you going beyond the war and going beyond the sanctions discussion, both embraced religious freedom, both embraced free markets, individualism, all the things that really have made our country great for 250 years. I think the most amazing thing, though, Larry, it occurred to me in the last several days when President Trump has basically endorsed 118 candidates in the various primaries, and 118 candidates won in all those primaries. They both have dominated their party entirely. And I think it has been very difficult for the establishment Republicans in the Senate, for example, to accept that. They're very unsure about deregulation. They're unsure about shrinking the federal government, which both of these men has made a top priority. Which is very hard to do.
As was the case with Reagan.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
I'm surprised people don't pay more attention to that.
That's
Reagan
right.
ran against the Beltway.
That's
Trump
right.
ran against the Beltway.
Yep.
Okay? The old guard in the Senate, the Republican old guard in the Senate,
they don't like
it.
it.
Reagan.
They
don't like Trump.
I know. History
really
has sort of glossed that over. And
Yeah.
now we sort of remember Reagan as being beloved by everybody. That wasn't the case.
I was there when we tried to put the tax-cutting budget through.
Voodoo economics. Right?
Yes, of course. I mean, look, Howard Baker was against it. Pete Domenici was against it. All those old, wonderful people. We love them to death. But they were against Reagan. Yeah. Reagan wins at a landslide, and they turn against him. It's the same with Trump in the 2016 election. Not so much now with 2024. But that's a really important point. Yeah. It's a point that's glossed over quite a lot. Now, other thing I want to emphasize is on lower taxes and a very light regulatory touch, the two believed that those were the principal stimulants to economic growth. That's something else people forget. Reagan tried to deregulate. In fact, Reagan decontrolled the price of oil, which kind of ended the whole OPEC hegemony at that point in time, 1981, 1982, right? Slashed tax rates, although it was delayed a little bit, nonetheless, had big growth rates, deregulated finance and so forth. They're similar. The two are similar. I mean, we're sitting here. I don't know. Maybe there'll be a duplication. We'll have United States of Trump in one of these things.
You know that President Trump wants Air Force One in his library, without a question.
Immediately, right? In fact, he might want the before and after on different floors of a tall building.
I think the economic fight over the past 40 years is similar. When Reagan came into office, he inherited 20% prime rate, 15 to 18% mortgage rates, the worst housing market since World War II. Housing was in full collapse. And so his view to solve that challenge was first to fight inflation. This is what President Trump campaigned on in 2024. Beat back the Biden inflation. The Biden administration left us with 9% inflation. A whole generation of people never seen inflation like that, something that we all took for granted at this table. And that's why I think this housing bill that we've passed.
Talk about housing bills.
Well, I think
you've been under pressure. A lot of people saw the first draft of those housing bills and said, "Oh my God, this is a terrible idea. Too much government intervention. Private institutional investors couldn't own homes, even though they have a good track record. And housing is the only part of the economy that's not doing well." I'm going to talk later about some of the new numbers. I mean, the economy is humming, but they won't write about it, the press. But anyway, you're fixing the housing bill.
We're fixing the bill that we've attracted Democratic support, and it is exactly the theme that Reagan had in 1982. He produced his own Housing Commission report, and in this bill, we deregulate building codes. We create freedom. We let people invest more in housing, and we remove the red tape from it, and we encourage our community banks. Our community banks in this country make 6 out of 10 home construction loans in this country, which is why we included those provisions in the bill. But we took out the worst big government aspects of some of the housing programs at HUD. And we took out
Warren stuff.
The Liz Warren stuff. And we took out what I think was a real mistake in the Senate bill, which was requiring private investors who are adding to the housing stock to be forced to sell it in 7 years. We took that out of the Senate bill.
So that's, you think, and the Senate will keep that out?
I think they will keep it out. I think they realize I don't know if it was a Pelosi moment where you have to pass it before you can read to find out what's in it, but it's a terrible provision. We got that out of the House. 396 House members voted for it, and I think it's now time for the Senate to pass it. And it is a perfect story, because just like in Reagan's first term, bringing the housing economy back, Donald Trump can sign this bill and bring the housing economy back in this country for affordability and accessibility.
Remember who the HUD secretary was for Reagan?
Sam Pierce.
Oh, I'm very impressed with him.
Yes, well,
New York lawyer,
Yep.
African-American,
Yep.
lovely man, smart guy, quiet, effective guy.
Well, HUD had 15,000 employees in 1984 under your watch. Under my watch, they have 5,000 and shrinking.
Oh, listen to that. It's just frontally. Like, I really wanted 15,000 employees at HUD. I wanted Commerce Department to be turned into condominiums. Steve Forbes, but I digress. Steve Forbes, the Atlanta Fed GDP now is still close to 4%. A little softer first quarter GDP, but who cares? There's a business boom going on in America. Trump was talking about that. Do we have the Trump tape on that? That nobody wants to talk about the economy? Or maybe not. Anyway, we had the Trump tape. Here it comes. Here's Trump, frustrated that no one wants to talk about the good economy despite $4.50 gasoline. Take a quick listen, please.
Americans are benefiting working today. We have the most working, and we have 401ks at their all-time high, highest they've ever been. And that goes along with the stock market, which is the highest it's ever been. Under my most favored nation agreements, this is something that I wish the media would talk about, because to me it's one of the biggest things ever to happen in our country.
I mean, despite the war and the energy hike and the gas prices, $4.50, nonetheless, for one thing, consumers are still spending at close to 3%. There's a business boom. This is where it's supply side, Trump style, so important. Reagan cut individual tax, the personal income tax. Kennedy put it from, 91 to 70. Reagan took it from 70 to 28 when he left. Would that we were still there. Mr. Trump took the corporate tax from 35 to 21 and has now given us permanent 100% depreciation expensing write-off. So what's happened? Profits have soared. Businesses are investing everywhere like crazy, including today's numbers. CapEx, business investment, 9.5% annual rate. Productivity, a whopping almost 3%, 2.9% over the past year. And one thing, I understand the inflation problem, wartime inflation, which I think is temporary. I understand that some people have some pain with this. I get that. But the most underlying inflation issue, unit labor cost, the ultimate cost of labor as a floor, 1.2%. Now that energy doesn't enter into that. Gasoline doesn't enter into that. That's like productivity is the key. I think that's because of good policies. We didn't have this kind of productivity. It's AI for sure. I understand that. But I mean, how do you see Reagan came off of the deep Carter inflationary recession. It's a little different. But he was running, as Laffer would tell us, 10 or 12% a year for a while. But for Trump to get 4% a year or close to it, I think is remarkable in this day and age.
Yeah, and the key thing is those big gasoline prices you see now, stations now that are big as Mount Everest, the prices they post. Once this war is resolved, which it will be, those things start to come down. If the trend line is down, people will start to feel better. And this gets to something you and I have hit on. in the reconciliation bill, which sounds like a divorce bill, but anti-divorce bill. But why not go for cutting income tax rates, saying here's what we did last year, here's what we got to do, here's what we're going to do again for you. So not only here's what we've done, and one of the things Republicans are starting to do, and I hope they do more, is bringing real people who've benefited from those tips, benefited from the overtime tax cuts. Those stories are very compelling. That's what you got to put out there, and then say there's more coming, like those old late night ads. There's yes, but there's more, and go for a tax cut. And by the way, Treasury should finally get around to indexing capital gains,
which would help housing and ranching and farming and all that good stuff. What's the matter with you guys? Why can't you pass a decent pro-growth reconciliation bill that would have some waste, fraud, and corruption? I mean, J.D. Vance is doing a good job, but you need to codify it, show the savings. And by the way, while you're at it, don't you want real people, American citizens to vote and not non-citizens to vote? That should go in the bill, too.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we've got to fight the parliamentarian in the Senate on the policy
but not
on the tax.
Let's replace her.
Well, that's a good point. This gets back to Liz's point about the Senate.
Put Liz Peek in for
Would you like to be the parliament?
Yeah,
you want to shake the place up?
But that would be a superb supply-side issue to update the capital gains indexing on housing. It would be an immediate boon to the country.
There are so many people who cannot sell their houses because they cannot afford the capital gains tax. I mean, that is literally true.
I mean, small business in general is affected. People forget, farms, ranches, those people, they're sitting on things to go back, and homes. I mean, it's absolutely...
And by the way, why not a provision that you can keep your 2%, 3% mortgage if you go for a new house? Portability. Yeah, do it. 2%
mortgage. My first mortgage in the early 80s, I think, was somewhere around 12 or 14%. Yeah. I don't know. In real terms, though, it's probably cheaper. I got to get out. You guys are fabulous. Thank you.
Thank you.
Congratulations, Mr. Chairman. We appreciate it. French Hill. Liz Peek, as always, thank you. And Steve Forbes. We are about the same age, growing up in the same political. We got to pull it off one more time with.
You know the years are passing when you say, "Oh, to be 60 again."
Oh, to be 60 again, boys. Anyway, we're going to help Blakeman in New York. One last hurrah for all this.